We are back. We're back up here on the stage at the Heartland Cafe, where every Saturday morning we bring you live from the Heartland. I'm Michael James, your host for this morning's edition. I'm here with my friend Tom Geoghagen, and we are talking about the congressional race in the 5th Congressional District. Tom, fill us in on what the district looks like. What are the boundaries? It goes, I know, from the lakefront, it goes west. Fill us in.
It's like a World Fair kind of district because it covers every economic category and virtually every ethnicity that you can imagine. There are Jewish groups and Islamic groups and Polish-speaking groups and Russian-speaking groups and Arabic-speaking groups and a ton of good old ordinary Chicago people living
including
in
workers.
Really, my client base lives there, and it starts from Lakeshore, Lincoln Park, north of Armitage, Belmont Harbor, the very high-density lakefront, all the way up to O'Hare, everything that is north of Belmont and west of Western Avenue is in the district. It doesn't cover the Heartland. Oh, I'm so terrible.
We got Jan Sikowski.
And she's great. But if only I had a little squiggle that pulled in the Heartland Cafe, it'd be even better district. And about 20% of it is in the suburbs. A lot of Latino population, about 20%, very important. Schiller Park, Proviso Township is about 20% of the district. So it's got everything, including the old suburban Chicago, which, as my brother says, is the real Chicago. So it's a great district. It is a real Chicago district.
Speaking of real Chicago, we always think of ourselves as a labor town, but labor doesn't always get its way in this town. How much of your potential base and constituency in the 5th Congressional it would be members of organized labor?
Oh, I would say that in the total private and public sector, I'm sure it's very consistent with the national average, 15%, maybe lower. The labor is much bigger in the suburbs than it is in the city, much bigger in the suburbs. And the only reason it's up as high as it is in the city is because of city residency laws that require public employees to live in the city. Otherwise, it would be a low rate. Now, having said that, there are labor people there, as there are in even right-to-work states. There are definitely labor people out there, and we're making an appeal to them. But I've always, when I describe myself as a labor lawyer, and I do represent unions, I represent a couple of unions here and have a big part of my practice is a union practice. But part of being a labor lawyer is I represent people who have no unions to protect them almost as often as I do unions, just who aren't in any union at all.
Are there any unions that have come out in support of you?
Yes. I had a list here. California Nurses Association, American Nurses Association, National Nurses Organizing Committee, Chicago Steelworkers 7243, which I effectively have been representing in a way in a particular big case that we just settled. I'm not allowed to say what the settlement is, but we just settled it. Teamsters 743. We do a lot of work with the Brotherhood of Railway Engineers, and we have all sorts of rank and file groups, the Oracle Social Club, for example, which is a big fraternal association, and IBW Local 134 has been behind me. And we have a campaign that is full of often younger, but not always younger, staff people who are volunteering on their own individually. So from SEIU, from AFSCME, from all sorts of AFL-CIO unions. So there are plenty of labor people in our volunteer base.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland. I'm Michael James. I'm talking with Tom Geoghagen. He's a candidate for the 5th Congressional District seat to replace Rob Emanuel. One labor union that did not endorse you was SEIU, which likes to kind of position itself as the most progressive force these days. It's a large union. It's split off from the AFL-CIO, brought some other people with them. They came out for another candidate who was certainly a liberal, but not necessarily a progressive. Can you fill me in any way, form, or fashion with your insights as to why SEIU would not back you in this case? Because it seems to me, knowing SEIU organizers here and in other states, who are certainly came out of radical movement and are progressive folks today. They would like you. They would love you. What's the deal?
They do like me and love me, at least the SEIU organizers. You can tell that from the contribution base. We have way over 1,000 contributors. I don't know what the number is now. It was over 1,000 a couple of weeks ago. And the average contribution is $150. And I can tell you a lot of those people are SEIU organizers that I know, and people at SEIU at the top. A lot of them have given us money, and our volunteer base has a lot of SEIU staff people in it. All over the country. Why did SEIU, the state council, not endorse me here? You have to ask them.
Well, they may have to pay for that.
No.
No, I don't mean for the endorsement. I meant that they may, if you win, they'll be talking to you.
I have. It's no secret that I've brought cases on behalf of, if not informally in behalf of, but on behalf of SEIU, big cases. And one in particular that SEIU was of material assistance to and was thrilled that I brought was just settled. It was a suit against Advocate Healthcare, requiring them to provide charity care for the uninsured and to sharply reduce the prices of those who were even at 4 times the poverty level for any medical care that they received. It was a big case, and that was one that was part of SEIU's national agenda. Michael, I have plenty of SEIU supporters in the campaign. But
That's
you're
good.
right, I don't have the SEIU
That's
State
good.
Council.
All right. Now, one of the other things that you do is you write books. And one of my fellow members of the Democratic Party here in the 49th Ward, of which I have the position of president of that organization these days, is a guy named Eric. And Eric turned me on to your book, Which Side Are You On? And I started reading it last night, and then early this morning as the sun, well, not the sun, but it got light. And it really was wonderful to read. You talked about Eugene Debs. You talked about the AFL really being challenged and taken over by the CIO, and you talked about John L. Lewis. And then you talked about the decline of labor. You talked about the sellout of labor. And one of the things that you mentioned in there was the Taft-Hartley Act.